Hello, welcome back to the Meet the Speaker studio. We have two more speakers with us today. So, hello guys, how are you?
Well, I'm fantastic, and thanks for having me here. We haven't long been off our keynote speech panel, and I had Sonia Rai on there. I'm Dudley, by the way, Dudley Sawyerr.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what you do, Dudley.
I'm Dudley Sawyerr. I'm here with CareVision, so we're one of the software providers who are on the assured providers list for the NHSX's list. And we provide software for those within the sector, which we've been doing for now 4 to 5 years, which is
software for
4 to 5 years. I just had a keynote speech all around equality, diversity, and inclusion, and we had the actual title was "Social Care isn't for anyone; it's for everyone," which was well received. It was packed full, and we had some great speakers on the panel. One being Sonia.
My name's Sonia Rai. I am the founder and director of Nectar HR. And like Dudley said, I just had the pleasure of being on a panel with him on the keynote stage talking about equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. We do a lot of that kind of stuff with our clients, but just obviously general HR as well, general HR services.
Lovely. So we've a few themes have come up today in the interviews I've been doing with people here, and one is low cost innovation. So ideas of things that people can implement easily to just help improve their business. So when we chatted a bit about that off air, so do you guys want to share some ideas with us?
Well, it's quite interesting when we think about innovation. I think what we found during the pandemic and COVID were that we were quite segregated, people couldn't speak. And there was a big transformation within technology within social care, not just at the high-end level, but just on the everyday level. Families trying to speak to their loved ones, as well as people sharing information, be it WhatsApp or as basic information on the various apps, Zoom and various other sort of like virtual sort of meetings that happen. But one thing we found that was really important for us was like we created something which came about was called a family app, which meant that families could see their loved ones regardless whether or not they couldn't see them in real time. They could get to see how they were doing. So from a safety point of view was one element, but also sharing good stories, birthdays, sharing even on the other end of sort of like birthdays of their family members as well. So something which is simple enough to do, we incorporated it, and it absolutely is really now part of what we do as well. But something simple enough as a family app, I think is priceless. And I think from an innovation point of view, we're out reinventing the wheel, but we're actually getting people together. And I think social care is about getting people together to talk. I think that's really key.
Love that. And Sonia, you got any quick tips for people?
Definitely. There's a few I can think of in all fairness. Some of them come under, the EDI banner. So things like, encouraging lunches, people to bring in their own kind of authentic foods. For example, we've got Diwali coming up soon. So, do we want to share, do we want to bring in lunch? Do we want to talk about the story behind that, why it's important to people, why we celebrate? But there's other things that we can do. Quick wins in the organisation, things like Fruity Fridays, where you supply fresh fruit on a Friday. But also looking at things like well-being. So,
before,
I think COVID has helped us to think outside the box when it comes to virtual, We have getting sessions put on for staff where it's not necessarily have to pay for a yoga teacher to come in, but we've got a YouTube and a YouTube channel up, and we've got somebody who's great at yoga, and it helps the staff kind of relax in their lunch break or whatever it might be. And sometimes they really need that, especially in this sector. So things like Fruity Fridays, access to lots of free resources. We're seeing a lot around cost of living at the moment. There's lots of free resources that organisations could look at supporting for their staff. Helping them be a bit more savvy when it comes to finances, especially at the moment. All we're seeing, we're putting on the TV, we're reading the newspapers. It's all about electricity costs, rising prices, all these kind of things, and that impacts people when they come to work. So how can we help them understand a bit more about that and help them feel a bit more secure? Because when we are not helping them, we have things like anxiety, stress, and that impacts how they behave at work, how they perform at work, and sometimes with them going off sick and things like that as well.
Information sometimes is so valuable, where someone might have a perception about what could happen.
Yes.
And actually sitting down with them or taking a moment or enabling yourself with the access to resources that you can give them. It might not necessarily be stuff that's like for money.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of care workers will be struggling in the current climate,
Yes.
but actually just talking to people about saying, like, okay, what are you having specific problems with? And then making them aware of things like the Care Workers Charity, for example, that
Yes.
after, if they are really in a point where they've, their
Yes.
washing machine's broken down and they can't afford to buy a new one, or you get grants, things like that. So I think it's enabling yourself as a leader with information to be able to furnish your teams with that. to help
Yeah, and those are things that you can do on a shoestring budget. The only thing that it's going to cost you is a bit of time to kind of put that resource together. So I think when it comes to innovation, sometimes we are seeing that we haven't got huge budgets. We're not some huge corporate organisation. We are working and sometimes very tight time frames, but these are very quick wins, and you can do a lot of them under the EDI kind of toolkit, as we would call it as well. So people are feeling included, people are feeling like they are seen at work with whatever you might have going on and what events you might plan.
Talking about EDI, I think maybe a lot of people find it difficult or awkward to talk about it, especially someone like me that doesn't really fit under that banner. Like, how should leaders that maybe don't fit into that category of being someone who is black or Asian or disabled or something like that, where how do we talk, how do we communicate that? So I'm comfortable communicating because a lot of I have to film with people and we have to talk about who to include in the video.
Yes.
Is there someone in the organisation that would help us show that we do employ people, black people, Asian people? Yeah. How does someone start and say, how do we do that without being uncomfortable? Is it just about just being open? I don't know.
I think it's quite an interesting area, and I have this, and people used to term things such as brave conversations and being careful what you say. I think if we looked from the top end down and we looked at what happened during the pandemic, we looked at social care as being the little brother or sister of the NHS, and no one really looked at us. Whenever we weren't included, we felt left out. And as a sector, we kind of are used to that. Someone said, oh, we're like misfits. So if we take that as a standing point and say, okay, how would you like to include someone? What would you do? And I think there's this whole big thing now about allyship. And beyond obviously all the serious conversations that are to be had, supporting one another, being valued, belonging, all the things that we know and we're used to. If we then term, if you want to value me by thinking about giving me a day off, for example, on a Friday I have to go to prayers, or for example, if I'm pregnant or if I've got to get children, just the normal things, that those little touches can make a difference. It doesn't have to be a difficult, always a situation where we have to go through a whole 6 months of training. I think it's understanding that, we might have some advantages, but then also as well, we can also help with our advantages and help others. I think that value belonging is really important.
Understanding the context, right, in people's lives.
Understand the context.
And that's the same all over, right?
Yeah. And a lot of these changes, you're changing the culture in your organisation essentially. So you made a point. You kind of said, you don't feel that you haven't got that, perhaps that label. But if we look at the protected characteristics under the Equality Act, you're covered. We all have one of those characteristics, whether it be sex. Sex covers both male and female, sexual orientation, all these kind of things.
Can I interject very quickly? I always find it interesting when we talk about, especially males. Well, we know that 82% of the workforce in health and social care are female.
Yes.
So you already are in the minority.
Oh, okay.
So just to let you know.
It doesn't often happen to sort of white males of my age. Is it?
Exactly.
There you go.
And perhaps that's a perception that you have, and that's something unconscious that you have. So, one of the things that we've been doing a lot of is unconscious bias training. So looking at our unconscious biases. We make judgments about people within the first 7 seconds of meeting them, kind of on average 15 judgments people will have made of watching, us right now. And it's about understanding what those judgments are and how they play out, because if we're responsible for people or a service in an organisation, then those unconscious biases are always at play. So we like to do a lot of kind of workshops, a lot of reflective pieces to look at those unconscious biases, and then how do we then remove them in the workplace so that
I guess it might be quite hard, because for some people those unconscious biases are not nice, right? Like it's very negative, and it can be quite difficult.
It can
to
be.
look at yourself in the mirror and say, but that's what I'm thinking now. That is not that's not the right, and that's misjudged, or that's from your childhood, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite difficult for people to do.
Absolutely, and we talk a lot about where our unconscious biases come from. They come from our parents, from lived experiences, from the media, from social media. And we talk about a lot of relevant examples, and it is a very safe space to share. And I will always be the first to share what some of my, unconscious biases were, but they've come out because I've done the work, and I've realised what they are, so they are no longer hidden to me as well. So before I make a decision, I think about that, and these kind of things are small things that you can do to understand the why you do probably act the way that you do at work, or why you delegate work the way that you do. But when we've got people that are in charge of people at work as well, it's very important to recognise that they may have unconscious biases at play. And there's very simple things that we can do around recruitment processes, putting in objectivity, scoring, not just in interviews but in probations, all these kind of things that can make it more of an equal and level playing field.
I mean, we've gone deep and we've gone big, and I've got a really big question for you both. So we had a debate this morning at breakfast at 5 and a Bite about toast.
Okay.
And I said, butter on toast, nice, and jam on top of it. And two of my team said, what do you mean butter and jam together on toast? And I said, what do you mean no butter with jam? Where do you stand on the butter jam toast scenario?
Oh, it's a bit like the scones and or is it scones and the cream and the jam.
I would personally say it's not that established debate.
I've never heard this debate before.
Stunned
yes.
that was even a thing.
So, I mean, for me, I do butter and then I do jam. Like, that is just,
Good.
that
Dudley?
is...
Well, I'm going to take it even further back. I'm a fully inclusive person. I'm surprised you even talked about butter or margarine in the first place before we even got to jam or marmalade.
We welcome all types of butter.
So I think let's get it straight. So I'm for everything in there. So me, I think jam it can do, but I think, as you said, more on a scone as opposed to toast.
Yeah.
Especially, and I think jam and butter, not brown toast. More for white.
Very inclusive answer
wow.
there. So we're now about to go live for ponies with Steph. Look, there's actual ponies at the Care Show. So we're going to hand over to Steph. Thank you very much, you guys.
No
for coming
problem.
And talking
Thank you
to
so
me.
much.
And we're handing over to Steph to interview a pony.